So, when I had to kill my last dog, which hopefully will be the last time in many years, because I really don't like doing it, I was driving on a rocky road and not made of ice cream, and I saw some stones. For some reason, in a few times, when I last drove the van before it broke, you shut the fuck up. It's another thing I gotta do as I design my place is make sure I don't set up systems that have dogs that bark at you when you walk by. It's bad behavior. Now, I appreciate it here in town. That's just fine. People need to protect their homes, and having a dog do it for you is a great idea. But I think that we can build things in a way that we don't have barking dogs around all the time. They're just annoying. Anyway, so I picked up these stones in the road because they were flat and somebody had dumped them there, or it was a road that was falling apart or something. I mean, it was like a dirt road of rocks and shit. And I picked them up because they look kind of like tombstones. And I think a lot about death. I've always had a very close relationship with death for various reasons, and at various points in my life, because I've lived an adventurous life, I've been close to death, or had death very close to me. And it's a interesting topic since we all are going to experience it. And I have thoughts about setting up a whole graveyard, like a really cool, ideal graveyard that wouldn't be a sterile, stupid, boring one like where I come from. Graveyards are boring, and it's almost an insult to bury someone in a place that's that boring, you know. And it's a waste of land. Like, sometimes in cities, there's really nice pieces of land are just wasted on a place where they're not even used for anything. Like, I've actually slept in a graveyard up in the city I come from because it was across the street from me, and so I slept there with a couple of friends and did some other stuff in that graveyard because there was a cool tree there and things like that. So graveyards could actually be multi-use spaces, and what I'm picturing is more like a sculpture park. And I was thinking about with these stones that I got, which are kind of not very big, you know, they're like this big, flat. I was thinking about setting them up in a way like on a slope where you can walk up near it and then paint on them names of some people who don't have a known gravestone. Genghis Khan, for example, was buried in a place that's secret. Nobody knows where his body's at. And he's an interesting case since he's genetically very important. A lot of people were descended from the genes that he has spread. And the way he did it probably wasn't very polite. But anyway, I could create some tombstones for people who don't have them, or tombstones for concepts. I can make a gravestone for God. God is dead, whatever. God is not dead. God is the same delusional bunch of gods that we've always had. I think, Hindus have like, is it 320 something thousand gods? You can just make up a god if you're Hindu. It's really cool. I should make up some Hindu gods. I mean, like, you could just have a town and you can be like, oh, our town needs a god. We'll make up a god. I'm pretty sure. Don't trust me on that. I'm not an expert on Hinduism. But Indian culture is very impressive to me in many ways. You know, it's crossroads for so much of things between Asia and Europe and Africa, and spice trades and Silk Road, everything. I assume the Silk Road goes through India. I don't even know that. But anyway, so the idea would be to make on a slope so you could walk up next to it and take a picture, so you could easily photograph these gravestones and then put tiny plants around them, like tiny succulents and shit. Really little plants that are short. And make it look like it's a bigger gravestone. Make it look like it's, 2 meters tall. Something that's bigger than a person is cooler. Like, I don't like sculptures of human figures that are little. I say a lot of weird shit. It's just a personal thing of like, I always think it looks kind of like cheap. And I have them. I have a sculpture of the Santa Muerte, the dead saint, who's a woman, by the way. You can't tell because she's a skeleton, and unless you have a big hat on her and stuff. But dead saint's actually pretty cool. Not a officially approved saint by the Catholic Church. But I have a sculpture of that that's small. It's about this tall, that tall, and that's cool. But I would actually like to get some mannequins. I need to find a place that has used mannequins, or I'll even buy them commercial if I had the money and felt like being a consumer for art, which at least is a relatively cool reason to consume something, is to buy it as an art supply. So maybe if I made a deal with some manufacturer of mannequins, they could even be a sponsor. And instead of just setting up gravestones for different entities, concepts, whatever, I could also make shrines, life-size shrines, like with a full human-sized figure, or even bigger. And I don't want to waste a lot of resources on that. I mean, I think the tallest sculpture in the world is of a Buddha or something, or maybe they made one of some guy in India who I've never heard of, but he's apparently very important to somebody who was able to fund this massive sculpture. You could do your own search on that. You can look up, like, what are the biggest sculptures of people in the world, and there's one that everybody keeps saying, you've never heard of this, but I've gotten so many links to that I clearly have heard of it, so stop telling me I haven't heard of it. It's a Cherokee woman, and the sculpture has some cool name, and I think she's got some kind of cape thing or something. I don't know, I saw pictures. And it's in the middle of, not somewhere you normally go, like South Dakota or somewhere, I don't even know. But it's a cool sculpture. But I wish people would stop telling me I've never heard of it, because it's like, oh, well, white people haven't heard of this thing. It's, it's like, well, actually, I have heard of it. And the fact that I've heard of it, even though it's in the middle of goddamn nowhere, is kind of actually impressive. It's a cool sculpture, but that's not the kind I want to build. That just uses more resources on one project than I would want to do. I can't think of any reason to have something be that big. But I would like to make a cemetery that's like a sculpture park, right? And probably compost bodies in it. And there's a lot of details, some of which you won't like, related to that. But basically, like, all this embalming shit and the way we deal with death is just dumb in so many ways. And so I think we can improve that. And I might even make it so in a grave you compost the body and then you collect the bones later, after the body's rotted away, and you toss fungus in with the body and stuff like that. And there's a lot of innovations there, actually, that people have been doing. Like, we'll do this echo pod for your body, and we'll grow tree on it and stuff like that. And I don't even want to get that complicated. I'd rather set up a system that is pretty fixed and just serves the purpose. But I do like the idea, because I like bones in general, of collecting the bones, and I could even auction off my own bones to support something after I die. I mean, somebody out there would probably want to buy my skull. I mean, it would be cool to have a skull even if you didn't know the person, but if you actually knew me and you had my skull, that'd be cool. And also, I have a bunch of metal in my legs because I broke them, and so somebody could buy my bones with big metal things screwed into them. I don't know. That's pretty weird art, I guess. So I know I'm losing a few of you with that, but I don't care. The point is, do it in an ecological way and have this space not be one that is empty all the time, but is available for picnics. Make it like a good place to have a picnic, a party. And you could make any kind of sculpture you want. I mean, I've thought about like how I can make concrete sculptures in the ground. Like dig the form out in the ground for the concrete sculpture, like a mold, right? And then, because moving heavy stuff's hard. Although people moved Stonehenge rocks, they've moved other stuff. Like there's sculptures around the world that people move stuff that we still don't quite know how they did it. They didn't have cranes and stuff, and I think that I don't want to get a crane or anything. I want to figure out how big a thing can we make that will last. And I was actually thinking of a question mark. I want to dig the form of a question mark in the ground, right? And then have a base for the sculpture as well as part of the same form. Later on, you won't see that. Dig a hole next to it, and then pour the concrete. And I don't know if we need rebar. I mean, it's not load bearing, right? So I don't know if we need rebar in it. Rebar is a weak part of concrete. I mean, we could use basalt rebar, which doesn't rust, because we're building a concrete world that's going to rot, unfortunately, depending on whether water hits it. But these sculptures would be exposed to the elements, and so how do I build a big concrete thing that won't just be a crappy looking piece of broken concrete with rebar sticking out of it later? You know? And a question mark has an arch. Yeah, I mean, I could make it with a whole background incorporated, so it could be on a concrete slab that the sculpture of the question mark is part of, so I could cheat. But I like the idea of a freestanding one, right? And then pour it, and then with a bunch of labor, tilt it up into the hole, kind of like those really cool Easter Island sculptures, which I assume were carved out of rock. I'm guessing those were carved out of lava rock. And those are really interesting. By the way, they're not just heads. There's bodies under those. So we didn't apparently know that before. But the question mark I like because it's such a fundamentally important symbol, really. It's my favorite punctuation mark, I guess. And so we could make this big concrete thing and then tilt it up. And then you could put graves around it where you bury the people and then you dig them up later. And there's precedent for that. There's a lot of different ways around the world how dead bodies are handled. Like Zoroastrians used to just put them in fact, I believe they still do. I think I saw pictures of this. I think they have some form of sky burial or some term for it. I forgot, I'm sorry. But they just let birds eat the bodies. And there's other places where they just put them up on a cliff or something. And I think that's pretty cool, actually. I mean, a long time ago, I thought to myself, well, what's going to happen with my body? I was younger, and I was like, well, you know, they could just dump it out of a helicopter in Alaska, and wolves could eat it. That would be pretty cool. But then my bones would be gone. So that part would not be cool. But, yeah, you could have like this big concrete, and you could use tint in it, so it didn't look like concrete. It could look red, or it could look black, or it could look anything but green, because I want to contrast with the trees in the background, right? So not green. It could be blue, because then you could use it like a blue screen, and any photos or video of it, you could replace the video, and it could have like a cool, mysterious pattern moving on the sculpture. So the sculpture could become anything you want it to be. And then you could, for some reason, it amuses me, the idea of like lighting it on fire, like a burning question. I don't know. It's kind of, you know, the Ku Klux Klan burning the cross thing, which I always thought was weird, because if you like the cross, why are you lighting it on fire? But I don't really know a lot about Ku Klux Klan symbols and history, and to be honest, it's not really something I care about. I kind of dislike that general line of thinking, but it always did seem weird to me that you would burn the symbol that you theoretically like, which is also the symbol of a dead Jesus. Like, I've never really understood why the cross is a great symbol for Jesus. I guess, well, actually I do know about that. It's about, you know, the sacrifice of the lamb and the forgiveness of humanity for the evil sins of Eve eating the apple and sharing it with Adam because the snake told her to eat this apple, which was probably a quince. But anyway, all this, I don't give a shit, whatever. So yeah, question mark comes to mind as one sculpture idea. You can, you know, comment on your ideas for what weird sculptures I could make. Most of them are of no interest to me, especially if they've already been done. Like, if it already exists, then I care less about it. Like, is there a reason I would make a Shinto arch thing? You know, that's a Japanese religion thing, and they have a cool looking arch. But like, why do I want a Shinto arch thing? And sorry if those have a name, I don't know it, but whatever. I should actually look into Shintoism and see if there's anything I like about it, because I studied almost every religion I can get access to. And now, of course, it's easy to study things because everything's online. So I don't have to go to the library and use a card catalog, which some people hearing this had never heard of. But it used to be like hard to study shit, and I did that. When I was in high school, I would drive to the nearby university and use their library because I ran out of books of interest to me in my high school library. And it's not like my high school had a shitty library. It was okay. It was a fine library, but I wanted more stuff for my head. And the university had a whole bunch of cool stuff. And I had to look stuff up a lot. Now, information's become easy. Of course, a bunch of it is fucking lies, but not all of it. And I should actually look into, they put up a chain link fence over there. Right over there. With barbed wire on it. I don't know those folks yet. They're friends of friends. Wow, that's very interesting. I wonder if they got robbed or something. I need fences around my place. That's another thing about the cemetery is that it should have a fence around it. Like it should not be access to the public, except in certain ways at certain times. And, it could actually be a business, right? Like you could actually have people that wanted to be buried there and they could be buried there. And I would like to be buried there. Right now I've got a cemetery picked out that I could get buried at because it's the obvious one I would use, but I really like the idea of making my own cemetery. And then people they would pay, they would pay to be buried there, and it would never run out of land because you'd be reusing the land, right? And there's places in the world where, for example, there's walls of skulls. There's a place with mummies, a bunch of mummies. There's places in Europe where, in caverns called like tunnels, not caverns here. It's the name of the thing. It's a test for you. Fuck. Well, they're not tombs, because a tomb, you're entombed in it. Anyway, they got, stacks of skulls and shit, and they just look cool. I mean, they also have places where skulls were stacked up because of genocide. That's not so great. But, you could have people who said, oh yeah, I'm not going to auction my skull off. I'm going to donate it to this cool tunnel of skulls, and you could have some skylights so that light came filtering in and looked mysterious and shit. And make sure it's not all dank and moldy in there. And, it would be pretty cool. If nobody wants to buy my skull, I could just donate it to that. Be like a big, cool art project. Catacombs. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. I don't know. And people would pay to be buried there. And it would give people a place to visit if they wanted to visit with their ancestor. I think that's enough on that idea for right now. Making a cemetery. And you might as well be able to use it at night too, so you could have some spots with fires. And even the cemetery that I plan to currently be buried in if I was to die right now, which I have not arranged, so I better figure my shit out real quick, because I could die right now. I could fucking have a stroke and die. Or a heart attack. There's no guarantee on shit. But I actually want to improve that cemetery. I want to donate a bunch of plants and hire people to put them in. I'm already reproducing a bunch of plants. I think that they made they had a tarp there. But there needs to be a place to get out of the rain and sun. So I want more spots to sit. It's a big area. They got plenty of space. But, it will eventually fill up, but it's going to be a while. But I remember when they started that cemetery and there was like 2 graves. And now there's like 30. There's people in there that died from COVID. There's people in there that died from violence. And of course, old people. I don't think that needs a view But then again, if we're really seeing it as a sculpture park cemetery, it could have a view. Because it's really being built not for the dead people. Screw the dead people. They're dead. You know? It's being built for the people who want to go visit those dead people and the concept of them and give them this final attachment of the people that they remember. Well, tell me your thoughts on that. Any cool ideas I haven't thought of? Sure, there's plenty. More dogs. Dogs fucking barking at me. Arr.